Good day, everyone. Let me begin by pointing out that dichotomies and binaries oftentimes form the basis to divisions, inequality, and discrimination, as in black versus white, north versus south, male versus female, and so on. In most societies today, there is a basic division between gender attributes assigned to males and females, which includes expectations of masculinity and femininity in all aspects of sex and gender. Most ancient societies had third gender categories, regarded as a normal facet of humanity. However, with the expansion of Abrahamic religions and under the influence of modern Western culture, all non-binary sexuality has become censored and stigmatized. The Old Testament in particular contains all manner of injunctions against non-binary sexual behavior. According to Leviticus 20:13, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. Thus, they shall absolutely be put to death. According to Deuteronomy 22:5, a woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wear women's clothing, for the Lord God detests anyone who does this. Gender roles shape and constrain people's life experiences, clothing choices, occupation, and self-expression. Transgender people are therefore discriminated against as immoral and unnatural. In the last 2,000 years, Christianity and Islam have acted as authorities for gender roles in their homeland, but have also imposed their gender binary on most indigenous populations worldwide. Pagan myths and polytheistic traditions often included homosexuality and transgenderism as a symbol for sacred experiences and cultural equilibrium. Third genders were ascribed spiritual powers by most indigenous societies, and described as gifted by nature and able to see both sides of things. The Rig Veda, a Hindu scripture, says diversity is natural, and what seems unnatural to some people is also a product of nature and should be accepted as part of nature. Research indicates that various forms of same-sex mating, as well as hermaphroditism, are quite common in several animal species and do not entail disease or deviance. They're actually recognized as important life history strategies that contribute to evolutionary success. The Bugis, an ethnic group indigenous to Indonesia, recognize as many as 5 genders in their society. However, most philosophers and mystics throughout history have acknowledged 3 main genders. The law of 3, according to George Gurdjieff, states that every whole phenomenon in the cosmos, including human life, is composed of 3 separate sources or manifestations. These 3 aspects are active, passive, and neutral or ambivalent. They could also represent body, mind, and spirit. Might as well be equated to male, female, and third gender. Take atoms, for example. They're not only made up of protons and electrons. Matter could not exist without neutrons, let alone a whole slew of other indefinable elementary particles such as bosons, muons, neutrinos, and so on. Eunuchs, who were castrated men, performed a wide variety of important functions in many different cultures. They were royal guards, government officials, religious specialists, singers, dancers, and more. The deification of third gender beings stems from the ancient trickster archetype. The trickster crosses and often breaks both physical and societal roles. In some Greek myths, Hermes is the divine trickster, the god of boundaries and the transgression of boundaries. Hermaphroditus, the two-sexed child of Aphrodite and Hermes, has long been a symbol of androgyny and was associated with marriage, which is the sacred union of male and female. During late antiquity, philosophers such as Philo of Alexandria continued to promote the idea of androgyny as humans' original and perfect state. In medieval and modern Europe, the concept of androgyny played an important role in alchemy, Rosicrucianism, and theosophy, in which the rebis, or divine hermaphrodite, was a representation of the merging of genders and the end product of the great work of alchemists. According to Plato, there were three sexes: the male people, who were related to the sun; the female people, who were connected to the earth; and the male people, who were associated to the moon. There is some correlation between the symbols of the moon, the rabbit, and the androgyne. The moon has often been viewed as an intermediary between the sun and the earth, light and darkness, mind and body. The moon embodies the spirit, the subconscious, and the dream world. The moon card in the tarot deck is number 18, which is the double of 9, meaning it encompasses and transcends the dichotomies of the physical plane. In several East Asian and Native American traditional beliefs, which also recognize the existence of two-spirited male-female people, the great rabbit god is a trickster and is often said to dwell on the moon. A trinity of 3 rabbits chasing one another around on the moon was a widespread motif in ancient Europe and Asia. Tu'ershan, the rabbit spirit, is a Chinese deity who presides over same-sex relationships. The Egyptian god Thoth was originally a moon god, symbolizing wisdom, mediation, and equality. Lan Caihe is a Chinese mythological figure and one of the 8 immortals in the Taoist pantheon, the only one who could be defined as neither man nor woman. It is said that in a drunken stupor, Lan Caihe left the human world by riding a giant bird into heaven, much like shamans travel to the spirit world in an altered state of consciousness. The Tungusic term shaman is a compound word formed from the ancient morphemes sha and man. The former is related to the Mongolian word setge and the Chinese shi, meaning to discern, to understand. The latter originates from the Mongolian term morodo and the Chinese cognate meng, both of which translate as dream and are related to the English words moon and mind. Therefore, a shaman is someone who can decipher dreams, travel across the universe, and communicate with spirits. The Dalai Lama himself is considered to be the successor in a line of reincarnations of Avalokiteshvara, the most popular tutelary deity in East Asia, variously known as Chenrezig in Tibet, Guanyin in China, Lokesvarak in Cambodia, Kannon in Japan, and so on. Avalokiteshvara was a bodhisattva, that is, an enlightened being or ascended master, said to embody the energy of the sun, the earth, and the moon, and described as having both masculine and feminine traits. Avalokiteshvara is often regarded as a manifestation of Ardhanarishvara, the androgynous Hindu deity who epitomizes the synthesis of genders and is exalted as the harmonic principle of creation. The third gender has been acknowledged for thousands of years in Southeast Asian countries, where it's known by different names such as Hijra, Kinnar, Katoi, and others. During British rule of India, authorities attempted to eradicate the transgender community, whom they saw as a breach of public decency. However, in the Ramayana epic, Prince Rama finds third-gender people to be very spiritual and grants them the boon to confer blessings on all important communal and life cycle events. The classical authors of the Mediterranean world were fascinated with androgyny and non-binary forms of sexuality. Attis was an ancient god of vegetation who, according to myth, castrated himself. His consort was Actistis, also known as Cybele. She was an assertive, powerful woman endowed with exceptional sensitivity to the occult dimension. She was the seated lady who inspired the Sibyls, the oracular women who prophesied at holy sites in ancient Greece, comparable to witches and shamans. The priests of Attis and Actistis were eunuchs who wore their hair long and put on women's clothes. In the late period of the Roman Empire, emperors were surrounded by eunuchs who were believed loyal and indispensable. Eventually, I wondered whether the Catholic Church had really been able to erase that age-old culture throughout Europe. For example, the cult of Actistis and the worship of the lunar goddess Isis were incorporated into the Christian pantheon under the guise of a Black Madonna. So I resolved to travel to southern Italy and visited Castel del Monte, a 13th century castle built by Emperor Frederick II. He was considered to be a heretic and was said to have a harem guarded by eunuchs. At the castle, I met Summer Minerva, who is an actor and researcher in the field of the third gender and is presently working on a documentary film.
Just dancing with these castanets.
Tell me more about it.
Well, these are from a dance called the Tamburiata. That comes from the surrounding countryside around here. The dance is done with tambourine, usually, and I just like the sound of those.
Hi, Minerva. Nice meeting you here in southern Italy.
Hi.
So, why don't you introduce yourself? Where do you come from? What is your background?
Well, I'm from New York. I'm Italian American. My grandmother is from Avellino, which is near Naples. She immigrated to New York about 70 years ago. She still lives there now. She's 90. And I find myself living in Naples.
Great.
Now.
So how long have you been here so far?
I've been in Italy for about 6 weeks, and I plan on staying forever.
So what does it feel like to be living in Naples? And what are the highlights so far in your expat experience?
Well, I love Naples. It's a city that, even when I say I love it, it feels very not enough. It's hard to explain the strength of my feelings for being in Naples. It's a city that really feels like it embraces me, and there's something very powerful and strong about the people and the culture itself.
So tell us, why exactly did you decide to come to Naples?
Well, like I said, my grandmother immigrated from near Naples 70 years ago, and I'm working on a film project right now, a documentary. And in this documentary, I'm retracing my roots.
Okay.
Back through Italy and specifically Naples, because it's where my grandmother comes from, and also there's a legacy of what's called the Femminili, or the third gender.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so as a person who identifies as queer and trans as well, and Italian American, I wanted to come back to Naples to see if I could learn more about the intersection of these identities, trans, Italian, and so that's part of what my film is about. It's about kind of finding these different identities and understanding what it means to be of those groups.
All right. Now, Christianity became the state church in the Roman Empire in 380 AD, when Emperor Theodosius II made it the sole authorized religion. And it's been prevalent in Italy for the past 16 centuries or so. So, do Italian people today embrace, welcome, respect the LGBTQI community?
Well, you know, a lot of Italians will tell you this, that there is actually no Italy, right? There is an Italian government, and there is an Italian quote-unquote language, but actually culturally it's very different from one region to the next, and particularly from the north to the south. So I can't speak for all of Italy because I haven't been north. I haven't been to the north, really. I can only speak about Naples. And so the question is Naples embracing of LGBT people? I would say yes and no. I mean, my experience of being in Naples is that people don't ignore me. So if people want to cheer me on or tell me that I look good, they don't hesitate to do that. And
they're very outspoken, aren't they?
Right. And then on the converse of that, if there's somebody that wants to make fun of me for how I dress or whatever, they don't hold that back either. So generally, I find, though, since I am, you know, feminine and I don't try to hide my femininity, I receive more positivity than negativity, whereas my understanding of the reality is that if you are a man that is presenting as masculine and you are gay and you are with another man who is gay that is your partner or something, that's more likely to elicit violence, because you're challenging what it means to be a man in relation to women. When I'm wearing a dress like this in Naples, it really means that I'm a woman.
some of my students who are particularly interested in esoteric science wanted me to ask you this question.
Okay.
What are the spiritual and cultural values that most people today tend to overlook or ignore that you think are important, especially for the future development of our civilization?
Right. Well, particularly of the third gender.
Of course, that's what we're talking about, the third
Yeah.
gender.
Well, I think that what the existence of a quote-unquote third gender signifies is that we exist in societies that encompass more than what is a man and what is a woman.
Yes.
And the roles of a man and the roles of a woman are extremely fluid and not fixed.
Absolutely.
And so I think that what is really important for us as a civilization and as different civilizations interacting is that we need to accept and honor the individual expressions of each person, and allow there to be diversity in the expressions of gender. And so, in the media, in literature, there needs to be women and men and people that don't identify as either, and people that identify as both, and people who switch, because actually in the literature of antiquity you find a lot of evidence of gods and goddesses in Greek mythology and Roman mythology and Yoruba mythology, and Chinese folk mythology, and Native American mythology, in which it's totally acceptable for people to present and express themselves exactly in the way that they want to.
Right.
And often that is not necessarily correlated to sexuality, even though it could be. And so I think that there is something, particularly for us, people who are embracing femininity and masculinity within the culture, I do think that there is something really sacred about my expression of my femininity. I don't want to speak for everybody, because it's just there's a diversity even within the transgender and gender non-conforming, third gender, whatever, community and outlook. Not everybody views their transition or their expression of their gender as sacred or spiritual. And I do. For me, this how I dress is a representation of my spiritual life, which is about honoring the feminine and honoring the mother. For me, is Mother Earth, and the practices in Catholicism now that exist within southern Italy, with the Tamoriata dance and with the honoring and the veneration of the Madonna. For me, that's another way of worshiping Mother Earth. And so my expression of my femininity is very correlated to that.
Okay, so when is it that you came out back in New York City, and what was your family's reaction?
I think coming out is a process, and I've come out many times in different ways. The first time I came out was as gay, I came out as bi when I was like 13.
All right.
And then I was gay.
When you were 13?
Yeah, yeah. And then I was gay when I was 16, and then I was trans by the time I was like 26 or 27 or something. But, I really envision a society where coming out is not necessary, where we don't have to assume that someone's gender or sexuality is going to be hetero and cis. we should not impose gender norms. We should not impose sexuality onto others.
Right.
We shouldn't see a young girl of 3 or 4 years old and ask her where her boyfriend is. These kinds of things really impose a certain kind of mindset and a kind of norm that is not necessary. It's not necessary. The structures of relationship that have been imposed by the church and by these religions, I think, really they make people have to fight against rules that society has created that don't need to actually exist.
Absolutely.
The gay rights movement in Italy right now has this focus on the family, wanting to be recognized as a family. 2 men can have a family, and that's absolutely true. But that's not what I'm here to say. I'm here to say that the family can be any different denomination of any number of parents, and gay rights and queer rights and trans rights don't have to resemble what straight people want to do and what they do.
With that. Absolutely. I'm home with you.
So, I know I'm touching on a lot of different things here, but I just imagine a culture and a society where you do what you want, and there's nobody who can tell you what kind of family you should have, or what kind of gender you should have, or what kind of sexuality you should have. We should have the freedom to self-determine all of these things.
All right, so is there anything particular you'd like to say to people back home or others around the world?
Yeah, I would say... A message would be... a message would be to tell the truth. Really...
be yourself.
Right.
Don't be afraid.
Tell the truth in the sense that, in America... and as a young person, I really learned that if I'm good, if I'm likable, if I do what people like, if I'm kind or nice, or in a good mood all the time, I can be liked. And that wasn't always my truth. I wanted people to like me because I felt really outside. And what I'm learning in southern Italy, and particularly in Naples and in my film projects, which I hope everybody will get to watch.
Definitely.
Is that, I can be in a bad mood, and I can be angry, and I can be upset, and I can be bitchy, and I'm still worthy of love. I'm still worthy of love, and by virtue of the fact that I'm being myself and that I'm being true to who I am. And so I want to say that be who you are, be who you are, and be there for yourself. And self-love is essential.
Great.
Hello, my name is Summer, and I'm working on a film that I think you might enjoy. And it's about my search for belonging, and it's about me tracing my roots through my family lineage and discovering that gender variance and gender transgression has been a part of Southern Italian culture for thousands of years. And my film, Appartenenza, is my autobiography of retracing these roots. And I hope you can come to my Facebook page and like it and keep your eyes open for when the film comes out at the end of 2019. Grazie.